Alrighty, before we move on to our service layer, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and stub out our register activity and our external login activity. So if you recall, if I jump here into my resource folder, layout folder, login folder, and then look at my one of my login views, we have these buttons. We have a register button, a Facebook login button, and a Google login button. I want to go ahead and stub out those activities, and there's only going to be two of them. We're going to have a register activity, which will be used to register a new account. And then we'll have our external login activity that will accept a parameter, depending on if we're clicking in through Google or Facebook. So let's, I guess, go ahead and get started with that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up to Java. I'm going to come up to our package. I'm going to go into our activities package, right-click, select new Java class, and I'm going to call it Register Activity. Yeah, Register Activity. There we go. And remove that awful comment. I really do need to. I might have a video about IntelliJ customization here coming up soon because some of these shortcuts and annoyances are really getting to me. Alright, register activity is going to extend from base activity. It's not going to extend from base authenticated activity because we're not logged in yet, right? So then I'm going to say override public or protected void. I always prefer doing protected void even though both are valid. Bundle saved state. First thing we do inside of our onCreate is of course super.onCreate saved state. Then I'm going to say set content view r.id r.layout. I always do that for some reason. r.layout. Now, when I do that r.layout, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select with my up and down arrows. I'm going to select android.r combuzzura.r, right? And then I'll go ahead and hit enter, and then I'll hit dot. And so that'll import combuzzura r up at the top of the file. Now I can go ahead and do is activity register. Now once I do that, I can go ahead and hit Alt Enter, and then I can select create layout resource file. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a linear layout for the root element, and I'm not going to give it any qualifiers. The register view is going to look the same both on phones and on tablets. So I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to go ahead and organize these attributes just a little bit. And alright. So what is this going to look like? Well, it's going to look very, very similar to our login. So let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. It's not terribly exciting, but we have to do it. So I'm going to say include, and then I'm going to say layout is going to be layout resource include login header, and then close. So now we get this, our awesome login header. Then I'm going to open up a frame layout with a width of match parent and a height of match parent. Why? So that we can have a relative layout inside of this frame layout that is centered in the remaining space of this linear layout, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say relative layout by typing in capital RE and then hitting enter. I'm going to give it a width of match parent and a height of wrap content. So we don't want its height to extend to the parent size because that'll defeat the whole purpose of us trying to vertically align this. And then of course we need to give it a layout gravity of center vertical. Remember, the layout gravity attribute is the layout parameter that is passed into the parent object. It is not the gravity of the child content, it is the gravity of how this layout view, how this view is used inside of the view group that it's a child of. All right, what goes in this relative layout? Well, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to have an edit text, layout width, match parent, layout height, wrap content. I didn't see that coming. And it's going to have a hint of username. I guess we can go ahead and... I don't know. Start separating it out or something. I don't know what the real convention is for usernames. I just wanted it to be, when I capitalized the N and made it not one word, I wanted to make it consistent with the display name. But I don't know. We might figure that out and change that later. I'm not too terribly concerned about it. Single line is going to be set to true. Margin bottom is going to be set to 8 device independent pixels, and its ID is going to be set to new ID, activity, register, username. Then we're going to have another edit text with a width of match parent, height of wrap content. It's going to have a hint of, let's do email for this. Let's do single line is true. Margin bottom is 8 dp. ID is going to be / activity register email. Then I'm going to do below, so layout below username. And then I'm going to select register username. So again, all I typed in was username and then hit enter. All right. And what else do I want to do? I want to go ahead and give it an input type of text email address, just to give the soft keyboard some hints about how I want it to look. All right, let's do the last line. The last line is going to be a width of match parent, height of wrap content, not surprising at all. Hint is going to be password, because remember, they're registering for an account that is specific to this service. They're not registering through a Facebook or a Google account. It's specific to this service, so they need both a username and a password, right? So they can log in with their username and password. Set the single line to true. Set the margin bottom to 8 dp, just like usual. Set the ID to ID activity register password, and set the input type to text password. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and say below email, below activity register email. All right, so you guys might be looking at this and being like, well, wait a sec, why do you even have that relative layout? Why don't you have a linear layout? Well, that's coming up with the button we're about to write. Now, the button that we're about to write is actually going to be very similar to how we're going to write the button for our login page, but unfortunately I completely forgot to throw the progress view into that. Anyway, what progress view? The progress view we're about to write. Basically, what I want to have happen is, I want there to be a button, and then when you click the button, while it's processing my request, I want the button text to disappear, and in the center of that button, I want to have a little spinny progress icon thingy, right? One of those little spinny things, indeterminate progress bars. You guys have seen them in most operating systems and sites. So I want the text of the button to be replaced by a spinny circle. And I want to implement this without having to write a custom view. So to do that, I'm going to start off by making my button. So the button is going to have a width of, you guessed it, match parent, and a height of wrap content. It's going to have a text of register. It's going to have a, let's see here. I guess we want a background. We want it to be similar to the login button. So I'm going to give it a background of color / primary color dark, which, if you recall, is the color that we specified in our colors value XML file. We're going to have a text color of FFFFFF for white. We're going to say it's going to be positioned below our password, which is going to be register password. And we're going to want to give it an ID. So an ID of / activity register button. Okay, so now what I want to do is the whole reason why this is a linear or a relative layout and not a linear layout is for this one thing here. And that is, I want to make a progress bar, a little spinny circle thingy, to appear in the center of that register button. So how do I go about doing that? Well, I'm in a relative layout, so I can position it relative to the button. That's what the relative layout's for. And it's pretty straightforward to do it too. So watch this. I'm going to say progress bar, open up a progress bar element. I'm going to set its width to wrap content, height to wrap content. I'm basically saying that this progress bar is going to be as big as it needs to be. Then I'm going to set a flag on it that might not seem obvious. It's going to be indeterminate only. So basically there's two styles of progress bar. Well, there's multiple styles of progress bars, but conceptually you can think of progress bars as it comes in two flavors. We have the determinate progress bars that show a percentage, Determinant will, in this context, is referring to the fact that X amount of percentage of the progress bar is filled at any given point, right? An indeterminate progress bar is a progress bar that doesn't necessarily know what percentage is left on the operation, just kind of spins aimlessly, indicating to the user that something is happening, but not giving the user any feedback as to how far along that something is at happening. So that's why we set it to indeterminate only, to ensure that the progress bar is just sitting there and spinning on its wheels, showing the user a very convenient, nice-looking animation while we're off doing stuff. Okay, so what else do I want to do with this? I want to go ahead and give it an ID. We definitely want this progress bar to have an ID because we need to be able to show and hide it depending on the circumstance. So I'm going to say ID / activity register progress bar. And now the last thing that we need to do is we need to orient it. Okay, so let's do the easy thing first. The easy part of this is we want that progress bar to appear in the center of that register button. The center of the register button happens to coincide with the center of the actual relative layout itself. And there's a very convenient property for the layout parameters that are set on views that exist inside of a relative layout called center in parent, or center horizontal in this case. And we want to set that to true. Okay, so what happened? Well, the layout center horizontal is the layout parameter. We know that because of layout underscore. By it being a layout parameter, it's not something that the progress bar knows or cares anything about. It's something that the relative layout uses to lay the views out. And we set it to true, meaning now it appears in the center of the layout. So that gets us pretty close. Now, how do we go about making this appear inside the button? The answer is pretty straightforward. We have these two properties, align top and align bottom. So I'm going to say align top, register button. In this case, all I typed in was register button. It's not even case sensitive in this context, is it? Yeah, it's not even case sensitive. You can just type in register button and it auto-completes to activity register button. We hit enter. Maybe open this up a little bit. And then we have align bottom. And then, so you notice by align top, look at that. Our progress bar is now in the center there. It's really hard to see. Let me go ahead and, oh, what are you complaining about? I don't know. Let's go ahead and do progress bar. So now we see that the progress bar is actually aligned properly. You can barely see that because the color of that blue is very, very similar to the color of the blue of the button. But you can barely see that the align top is on this button. However, in case the height of the button changes for whatever reason, maybe the user has a different DPI setting for text, or maybe we change the style of the button or something like that, I want the bottom of this progress bar to also be aligned to the button's bottom. So to do that, I simply go back into the XML and I say align bottom and then type in register button and hit enter. Alrighty, so that is our register view. The last thing I want to do is I want to go up here to the top into my relative layout and let's see here. And I want to go ahead and just do one small refactoring on this. Basically, I noticed a warning. I usually ignore the view warnings because there's things like, oh, this should be a string resource, and oh, you should use... basically, it's all string resource stuff. But in this case, this warning actually reminded me of something that I happened to forget about when I was writing this layout. And I apologize for that. I went a little bit gung-ho with my view nesting. And really, one of the big things with writing Android views is getting your view nesting down to a minimum. Well, looking at the code, I just realized I made a mistake, and I can fix it by removing my frame layout. Basically, what I'm saying is I can remove that frame layout entirely and still have the same layout that we're looking at right now. It's actually going to be pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to delete the frame layout. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom and remove the end tag for the frame layout. Then go over here. And now you notice that our relative layout is now not, it's at the top. It's not centered how I want it to be. But we can fix that by going down to the relative layout, changing its height to match parent, so it fills up everything, and then changing its gravity to center vertical instead of its layout gravity. So the mistake I made was that what we can do here is the relative layout, we can set the gravity of the children to center vertical. Remember, the layout gravity is used by the parent object. The gravity is used for the child objects. What we're doing here is we're saying we want you to center all of your children vertically. Alright, so let's go ahead and remove the layout gravity entirely. And we now have a relative layout with considerably less nesting. So I thank you, Google, Android Studio team, for having that warning there to point out that I did something stupid. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I want some padding. I believe the padding convention that I'm using, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to turn this into a constant somewhere, but I believe the padding constant that I'm using here is 16 dp. So let's go back into our activity register, and for this relative layout, I'm going to give it a padding of 16 dp. And now we have our register form. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and go into the register activity, and I'm going to proactively alias out all of these controls. So we have our username, our email, our progress bar, our register button, and our progress bar. I think I said progress bar twice. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. I want to go ahead and alias out all these controls preemptively, even though we're not going to write much behavior in the register activity class yet. But I want to get this out of the way because it's really annoying and boring, and it's always awesome to get annoying, boring stuff out of the way first so we can focus on more interesting things when we get into more interesting topics. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off at the top of register activity, and I'm going to say private edit text username. Let's do username text. Private edit text. Whoa. Email text. Private edit text. Password text. See how exciting this is, guys? Private view. Register button. Or sorry, I want to do a button here. Register button. The reason I'm not doing a view here, I'm doing a button instead, is because I need to change the text of the register button to empty string when I make the progress bar visible. However, the progress bar, I'm simply going to do a view. Why am I doing it just a view? Well, because all I'm doing is I'm showing and I'm hiding it. Remember this progress bar that shows in that button? All I'm going to do is either show it or hide it. And that's functionality that's available to us through the view. So we don't have to request a more specific type. We can request a more general type. And we're going to call this progress bar. All right. So, important. After we do set content view, now we have the fun job of filling all these variables in. My favorite thing to do ever. So username text is cast to edit text. Find view by ID, RID, register username. Email text is edit text, find view by ID, r.id, register email. Password text is cast to edit text, find view by ID, RID, password, register password. Register button equals cast button. Find view by ID, RID, register button. Progress bar. Don't need a cast here because find by view by ID returns a view. R.id, activity register progress bar. All right, next up on the onCreate method, I need to configure my views. So my register button, I'm going to say set onClickListener this. I'm not going to implement the onClick method yet because there's one more thing I need to configure, and that is I need to do progress bar set visibility, or in this case, view.gone. Okay, so what am I doing here? We haven't talked about views being shown or hidden yet, basically every view can be shown, hidden, or gone. And when a view is shown, when it's visible, is the terminology here. When it's visible, it's, well, you know, visible. It's the default state that the control is in. It's visible, it's clickable, it's all that fun stuff. Then we have another one called hidden. Or, sorry, I meant invisible. Because you couldn't make it the same as CSS, could you? So invisible is basically, it's invisible. It still takes up space in the view layout. It still gets laid out by the parent, but it's invisible. Then we have gone. And gone means not only do you not see it, it doesn't get put into any view calculations, any measurements, anything like that. It is gone. It's as if it didn't exist. Now, it still does exist. We can switch between gone and visible and invisible as much as we want. But in this case, what we want is it to be gone. We don't want it to take up any space or to be calculated by its view parent. All right, so now that we set our progress bars to visibility gone, I'm going to come up here to set on-click listener, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-Enter. Hit the down arrow key, hit enter, enter, and now I have my on-click. I'll change that parameter name because I hate single-letter parameter names. And then I'm going to say if view equals register button, then I'm going to say set result, okay, finish. So again, we're stubbing these activities out. We're not writing the register logic yet. So basically all it's going to do is set the result to result okay, meaning you registered and now you're logged in, and finish so that the login activity will know that it's done. All right, let's go ahead and integrate our register activity in with our login activity. So let's jump all the way back to this login activity. And let's scroll up here. So basically, we have this onCreate method on our login activity, and what we want to do is we want to get a reference to this Yora register button, and we want to set an on-click listener. So what I'm going to do here is at the top of login activity, underneath our private view login button, I'm going to say private view, and then I'm going to do register button. All right. Then on create, what I'm going to do is underneath login button equals find view by ID, but before if login button does not equal null, I'm going to say register button equals find view by ID, RID, login underscore register. So now I have a reference to that view inside of the register button field. Finally, after I do if login button does not equal null, login button set on click listener, I'm going to say register button set on click listener. So why am I not wrapping this in an if check? Well, the answer is on a tablet or on a phone, both have a button with the ID of activity login register. Meaning, no matter which layout was inflated, we're going to have a reference to this register button. Meaning, I don't have to check for null. It would be redundant. This should always not be null. Okay, so now let's go ahead and handle our onClick. What I'm going to do here is, on my onClick method, I'm going to say else if view equals register button. Then I'm going to say start activity for result, new intent, this, and then I'm going to say register activity class, followed by request register. Now request register doesn't exist yet. It's code that I haven't written. So let's go ahead and write it. I'm going to hit Alt-Enter, and I'm going to scroll down to create, or not scroll down, it happened to pick it for me because it detected that I did it in all caps. Create constant field request register. So then I'll hit Enter. Now I'll be jumped all the way at the top of the file, so we just jumped from the onClick method down here all the way to the top of the file with newly generated code. It's going to ask me what type of variable I want. In this case, I want an int, so I'll hit enter. Next up, it's going to expect me to fill in a value. In this case, I'm going to fill it with the value 2, and then I'm going to hit enter. So that was a really quick way to implement the constant. So doing that a little bit faster would look like that. Didn't have to touch the mouse, didn't have to do anything like that. Just Alt-Enter, Enter, Enter, to Enter. So code generation is awesome, and people should definitely practice it. All right, so let's go ahead and test this. Oh, well, we can't test it yet because we haven't actually implemented the logic for when the register activity returns. So let's scroll down to the bottom here to the on activity result. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to say or request code equals request register. So all I'm doing on the on activity for result is I'm checking to make sure that's a result okay. And if the request code is a narrow login or a register, then we invoke our finish login method, which tells Android to launch the main activity. Note that I did do a line break here. The reason I did that is because we're going to be adding more request things to this if statement. So I just want to preemptively format it in a way that would be conducive to a very long line. You might also be wondering, well, if all of your start activity for results all do the same thing, why do you even have an if statement? The answer is for correctness. I mean, that's just the proper way to do it. You should always be explicit about how you write your code. I don't want to just assume that every single start activity for result is going to result in something that will finish my login. That would be bad, because it would potentially make issues later on if I introduce a start activity for result that doesn't result in finishing my login. This makes the code explicit, and it's very important to have explicit code so that you know what's going on. All right, let's go ahead and hit run. And while that's doing that, I'll go ahead and bring my two virtual devices up on my screen and just wait for them to restart. Now I'm going to click on register. And guess what? I totally forgot the manifest, didn't I? I do that a lot, don't I? All right, let's go ahead and jump all the way up to our manifest folder and open up our Android manifest.xml. And come down here and add a new activity. And the name of the activity is going to be Register Activity. I get to that by typing in REG, hitting enter, and then hitting space and hitting /. And that's it. It auto-completed everything else for me. All right, let's hit run. Now, Java is such a verbose language that working with the code generation, the autocomplete, and getting used to it is so important. It'll make your life a lot better. All right, so let's do your register, and let's do your register. Check it out. We have it on both the phone and the tablet. When we hit register, we do not get sent to the main activity. We don't get sent to the main activity because we didn't actually tell the system that we are now logged in. I'm just on a roll with mistakes here in this video. So let's jump into our register activity here, which is under our activities package. Now, when we click the register button on this onClick method, what I'm going to do here is before we set the result and finish, I don't think it actually will matter either way, but just for cleanliness and explicitness and better looking codeness, we'll do it this way. So before the set result and finish, I'm going to say application.getAuth.getUser .set logged in equals true. Or not equals true, but apply true to that method. All right, I'm not going to worry about testing it here again because it should work at this point. So we can go ahead and move on to the next activity that I want to stub out. Now, fortunately, this activity is going to be very straightforward. Really, the only interesting thing about this activity is it's going to accept a parameter. And that parameter being which service that we're going to log in as. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and in activities, right-click, new Java class. I'm going to say external login activity. Now, for external login activity, I'm going to have it extend base activity, not base authenticated activity. Now, what is external login activity? What it's going to do? Well, if you click the login with Facebook or login with Google buttons, I want you to be taken to this activity. this activity is going to have a web view in it. A web view is, you can think of it like a little mini browser. It's a little browser inside of your app, and it's a web view. Not a whole lot to say about it, and that's what's going to be used to log in externally to Facebook and Google. So basically, this whole activity is just a wrapper around one big view that's going to take up all the space. And that also means that to stub this activity out, it's going to be fairly trivial. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is remember I said there's going to be a parameter passed into this activity. That's because we're going to reuse this activity for both Facebook and Google, and conceivably whatever other provider we might want to use. So I'm going to say public static final string extra external service equals extra external service. So that is the parameter that's going to be passed into the intent that starts this activity. Then I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here. I'm going to do an override public void on create. Or sorry, protected void on create. Bundle saved state. Then I'm going to say super on create saved state set content view r dot layout dot, or let's go ahead and autocomplete that to combuzz eura r. Hit enter, so we get import combuzz eura r at the top. Hit dot, and then we're going to do activity underscore external underscore login. And then this activity, I'm going to go ahead and hit alt enter, and I'm going to say create layout resource file activity external login.xml. Hit enter. For the root element, now in this case, the root element I'm going to have be a frame layout. The reason for this is we're going to have a button for testing purposes that's going to overlay this. So hit OK. So what I'm going to do here is after I align these attributes in the way that I want them to be, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a web view. And then I'm going to say width is match parent, height is match parent, ID is plus ID slash activity external login web view. And we'll go ahead and make this tag self-terminate because we don't need any children. And then, things you'll only hear while programming. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button with the width of match parent, height of wrap content like usual, text, test login, and then I'm going to say gravity, layout gravity is going to be bottom. So this button I'm going to use for testing purposes so that when we press this button, it's going to simulate as if we did properly log in. Then I'm going to give it an ID of +/ID activity external login, I guess just test button. Alright, so that's it for that. Let's jump back into external login activity. And for this, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to, up here at the top, I'm going to say private view test button and private web view web view. Then, after I set content view, I'm going to set test button to find view by ID, RID, and then we're going to do test button, which is just, I just typed in TES and then hit enter and auto-completed. And then web view is cast to web view, find view by ID, RID, and then web view. So all I did was type in web view, hit enter. Next, we're going to do test button dot set on click listener to this. I'm going to hit alt enter, up arrow, enter, enter. So we're now implementing the on click listener. And then I'm going to say if view equals test button, then I'm going to log in. So I'm going to say application, get auth, get user, set logged in, true, set result, result okay, finish. Whoops, not find view ID, finish. No, finish. Why am I typing in a D? Finish. There you go. Sometimes your hands, your fingers just start typing letters that you don't want them to type, and there's just no stopping it. And that's our external login activity. For now, anyway. We'll be adding a lot more code to it later, but for now, this will allow us to test to make sure that it's all stubbed out properly. Actually, I want to go throw in one more thing, one more little fancy thing here. Up here on the onCreate method, I'm going to say test button dot set text, or test button is a view. Let's go ahead and change the type of test button to a button. This isn't necessary to do, by the way. I just want to do this real fast, just to for further testing purposes. Let's set test button to a button. So all I did for that was I changed the type of its field to button from view, and then I cast the result from view to button. Now, the reason I did that is now that I have this casted into a button, I can now say set text. And what is the text I want to set it to? I want to say log in with :+ then I'm going to type in get intent dot get extra, or get string extra, and I'm going to pass in extra external service. So basically all I'm doing here is I'm saying log in with, and then appending whatever service we passed in when we started this activity. All right, so that's all really incredibly super exciting and awesome. Now, before I forget, we're going to jump into Android manifest.xml, and we're going to make Android aware of this activity. So I'm going to come down here and say activity name equals external login activity. I got to that by typing in EX. Hitting enter, self-closing the tag, we now have our Android manifest where it needs to be. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to hook this activity up with our login activity, which should be pretty straightforward. Going into our login activity, I'm going to come up here to my private fields. I'm going to say private view Facebook login button, private view Google login button. Then on my onCreate method, again, remember I'm in the login activity. And remember, these buttons are going to exist both on the tablet and on the phone. Then I'm going to say Facebook login button equals find view by ID r.id Facebook. Google login button equals find view by ID r.id Google. Then, after my register button set on click listener, I'm going to say Facebook login button set on click listener is this. Google login button set on click listener is this. Now again, I really could use anonymous inner classes, but they just get so ugly. This is a little bit more code, but I think it's a lot more straightforward and considerably less ugly than using anonymous inner classes for click handlers. You guys might disagree. I personally find an excessive amount of nesting in the onCreate method to be annoying, especially when the onCreate method turns out to be 65 billion lines of code just because everyone wanted to stuff all their on-click handlers into that one method, and I find that really gross. So we're doing it this way. Now let's go ahead and write the implementation. So on the onClick method, I'm going to say else if view equals Google login button. Then I'm going to type in something that I'm going to type in a method name that doesn't exist yet. I'm going to say do external login Google. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that because that's going to translate into how we're going to be handling the external login on the ASP.NET side. Or Laravel side, whichever. Else if view equals Facebook login button, do external login Facebook. Now I'm going to do some simple code generation. We've referenced this function twice. It doesn't exist yet. Now let's make it exist. How do you think we make it exist? Well, not surprisingly, we place our keyboard cursor somewhere on the name of the non-existent method in the red. We hit Alt, we hit Enter, we hit Enter. Now we have a method. However, the parameter name is quite awful. So I'm going to hit Enter until it selects the parameter name, and I'm going to change that name to external provider. Now, for do external login, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an intent. So I'm going to say intent equals new intent, this, and then external login activity.class. Then intent put extra external login activity dot extra external service external provider. Maybe we can make this external provider variable the same name as what we used for the external service. I didn't think about that. So let's go ahead and rename this to external service, just for consistency's sake. After we do that, then we say start activity for result, passing in our intent, followed by request underscore external underscore login. Now again, this is a constant that doesn't yet exist, so we can make it exist with Alt-Enter, and then say create constant field, hit enter, and then we have int selected, and then hit enter, and then type in 3 to differentiate it from the other two requests. That's it. Well, almost. Now let's scroll all the way to the bottom on our onActivity result, and I'm going to add an OR. I'm going to say OR request code equals request external login. And that's it. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and hit run. And let's first test our register, and then we'll test our... So register, hit the register button, and we're at main. Register, hit the register button, and we're at main. Now let's go ahead and restart these apps. This is basically how I'm faking logging out, is completely destroying the app and then recreating it. Now let's go into Facebook login and check that out. Login with Facebook. Now you see the web view doesn't have anything in it because we haven't told it to navigate to any website or stuffed any HTML in it. But now we have login with Facebook, and we can click that and we become logged in. Now, just to test one last time for Google, even though it's going to run pretty much the exact same code. Google login, login with Google, login with Google, and we get logged in. Alrighty, so I really wanted to get all of that tedious, annoying stuff out of the way before we started actually implementing our code, because I really hate the whole back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I try to make sure we get all the scaffolding out of the way so we can focus on just the important bits later on. Alright, so now that we have that all done, I think this is a good time to wrap this video up. And I'll go ahead and I just want to point out, I forgot in the last couple of videos, but I have been committing my changes, right? So once you guys get access to this Git repo, or since you guys are in the future, you have access to this Git repo, you will be able to follow along. And of course I do it. I'll try to remember to do this on video. I might forget. I mean, don't hate me if I do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click the changes panel right here. And then I'm going to click this up VCS arrow, which is commit to VCS, commit changes. I'm going to type in a commit message. In this case, I'm going to name this video 18 app part 5? Yeah, 5. Then I'm going to come here to commit. I'm going to hover over the commit button, and then I'm going to select commit and push. Now what that's going to, then it's going to complain, and I'll hit commit anyway. And then I'll go ahead and hit push. So now I'm committed and I'm pushed. And we can check that by checking the log and seeing all of the changes we've made in every single video. Alrighty. So I think that pretty much wraps this video up, and we'll see you guys in the next one.